Would you please be seated? Most of you will know that I live alone, and that's great. I can do what I want, if I want, when I want, where I want, how I want, and not have to think about anyone else. It's brilliant. But I have shared living with other people through my life. Obviously, growing up when I was young, a family of 5, then we lived together. We shared the jobs and living at university and house sharing there. And when I worked in London, having to find rooms and then flat share. And then when I had my own home, a house, I had a couple of lodgers for a time. Now, I do remember back in 1984, all those years ago, when I was moving to London and had to just find somewhere to start my work as an articled clerk. I was looking for a room to rent, and I saw an advert and went to a room in Belsize Park. It was a big room, a bit dour and dull, admittedly, but it was big, it was sufficient. But then the landlady came out with the rules. No cooking after 7 o'clock. No baths after 7 o'clock. No friends after 7 o'clock. No TV after 7 o'clock. In other words, it was solitary confinement lockdown after 7 o'clock. So I didn't take the rooms, which was somewhat extortionate even back then. But I did find a room. In fact, I stayed with a great aunt for a while and then found a flat share and then had various flatmates there and found my own home and had a couple of lodgers for a time. And when you live with someone, you have to have guidelines. Who does what? Who does what job? Who takes the rubbish out? Who does the washing up? And so on. If not, there will be arguments because living together means a relationship of being together. In our first reading this morning, we heard the 10 Commandments, and many people think it's just a list of rules, of boxes to tick. Most of them, thou shalt not. Thou shalt not commit murder. That can be a shame sometimes with 1 or 2 people I'd like to murder now and then, but it's not allowed, so we're safe. You shall not steal, and so on. But these are actually guidelines of a relationship with God. This is God revealing himself to his people. And he begins this list of what it is to be with him by revealing himself. I am the Lord your God. And more than that, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. I am the Lord your God who frees you. I am the Lord your God who walks with you. The tent of meeting followed them. In fact, they followed it around the wilderness with the pillar of fire and cloud. And when it settled, they put up the tent of meeting. This is God in the midst of his people, revealing himself and inviting them to be with him, but setting out the terms of this relationship. And the first 3 commandments are about focusing on him. You shall have no other gods before me. I am the Lord your God. You shall have no other gods before me. In fact, the Hebrew before me is before my face. You shall have no other gods before my face. And that terminology is actually used when a man takes a second wife while his first wife is still living. Well, the word I'd use for that is fool, but that's a different sermon altogether. But it's about dividing your love. And God says, this is a relationship of love. You're not going to share. I don't want you, and I won't let you share your love for me with anyone else. I am the Lord your God. I'm the one who frees you from whatever it is that enslaves you. I'm the God who brings you to freedom. I'm not willing to share that love with anyone else. Focus on me. You shall not make for yourself an idol, something to worship. But it's hard to worship a God we cannot see. We want something visible. But we have had something visible. We have seen his glory. The glory is of a Father's only Son, full of grace and truth. He was in the world. The world was made by him. And those who received him, he gave power to become the children of God. We have seen his glory in Jesus Christ. We don't need an image or an idol. We need only to look to Christ. You shall not make wrongful use of the name of the Lord your God. The name is so holy it couldn't be uttered. It could only be uttered once in the year by the high priest at Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. Just the once. It's too holy. I am the Lord your God. Honour me. It's about that relationship with the God who calls us to freedom. The next commandment, the fourth commandment, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. It's about living in relationship with God's creation, that rhythm of work and rest. And not just for us, but for the vulnerable, the slaves, the aliens, the orphans, the widows, everyone to find that rest in God, to be at rest in him and with him, to know his blessings, and not just us, but also your livestock. The animals too must rest. And perhaps not in this part of the commandment, but elsewhere in the law, even the fields and the land must have their rest. Every 7 years, and then the year of Jubilee, the land must also have rest. The whole of creation to have that rest, that rhythm of seasons of work and rest, to live in relationship with our world, our planet, and the environment, to live in relationship with the other creatures, for we have a special role within God's creation, but we are still part of it. We too must set creation free, free from our dominion, free from our abuse of the creation that God gives us. The next commandment, honour your father and mother, about family relationships. Living together as a unit to support and encourage and help each other. And that will provide stability, whatever form a family takes, to live together in that household. And then come the relationships with other people within the community to keep the community strong. You shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness. Most crimes were capital crimes. To bear false witness could pass the death sentence. You shall not bear false witness. To live in relationship with the rest of the community, to build up the community. And then the final one is about our heart. You shall not covet. You shall not covet your neighbour's house, your neighbour's wife, slaves, livestock, or anything. Be content with what God gives you. If we have food and clothing, we will be content with these. We brought nothing into the world, we take nothing out. When we start to covet, then we want more, and then more still. You shall not covet. You shall trust God and give thanks to him for what he has given you. I am the Lord your God, the God who calls you to freedom with me and in me, as I walk with you through the wilderness and guide you to the promised land. In our gospel we heard of the occasion when Jesus goes into the temple. Weapons aren't allowed in the temple, so he makes a whip of cords and drives them out. And very often we think that it's about exploitation and extortion. To make a sacrifice you needed an animal, but you couldn't use any old animal. It had to be pure and without blemish. And so it had to be approved by the priest. So you had the traders. But you couldn't buy it with ordinary money because that has the emperor's image on it. You shall not make a graven image. So you had to have the temple's money. That cost you a day's wages, plus commission, just to get the coin. And then you've got to buy the animal with the coin. There you go. And yet we know Caiaphas, the high priest at the time, kept things really underhand, in hand rather. So everything was done properly. Yes, there was extortion, but not so much as we might think. So why was Jesus angry? He was angry because that relationship with God that was revealed to his people on Mount Sinai all those years ago, of forming that relationship of love, had now disappeared into rules and regulations and a temple and sacrifices. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. Justice, not burnt offerings. We had replaced love with ritual. Jesus would later say, because in John's Gospel this is happening right at the start in chapter 2. In chapter 4, John will tell us of the woman at the well in Samaria, when he will tell her, the time is coming when you won't worship God on this temple or in Jerusalem, but in spirit and in truth with no more barriers, for God walks amongst his people. Behold, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Jesus will say to his disciples at the ascension. God reveals himself to his people. He sets out the terms of the relationship. Not a board with rules and regulations to be ticked off. Yes, I took the rubbish out. Yes, I did the cleaning. But a relationship of love and trust, of working together, of living together, walking together, of loving each other, a covenant of love, as God reveals himself to us. I am the Lord your God. I bring you out of slavery, slavery to sin, slavery to death, slavery to whatever it is that imprisons you in your past or your present. I lead you to freedom through me, through the blood of Christ, and through the covenant of my love, which we celebrate here today. I am the Lord your God. You shall have, and you need no other gods but me. Amen.